Well, ladies and gentlemen, it is high noon. Yes, indeed. And I'm Jeffrey Daugherty, the Christian whistleblower, coming to you from an undisclosed location somewhere deep in the heart of North American flyover country. And I'm thinking very seriously about actually committing to a show time on a regular basis. I know it's hard for you to believe, but I am thinking very seriously of committing to the high noon with the Christian whistleblower every day, every weekday, committing to high noon. It is high noon, and I'm your Huckleberry. We are under the radar, but definitely over the top. And I want to talk to you today about Jesus saying, "You are of your father, the devil." Jesus said it. I didn't. I'm just repeating it. And the question is, do you serve Satan, ladies and gentlemen? And this is certain to get some people riled up. This is certain to get some people upset. Francis, that's just the way it goes around here. I always get at least 2 or 3 thumbs down, usually before the show even starts. So that's just the way things work around here. So let's go ahead and go right to the scriptures. And I want to show you exactly what I'm talking about, and we'll go from there. I don't think this will be a long installment of Podcast Excellence. We have a few to bring to you today. So watch this, ladies and gentlemen. I think you're going to find it very, very interesting. Truth Apocalypse is right. He did also call them a brood of vipers, which means a brood of snakes, a family of snakes. So King James Bible, you are of your father, the devil. And the lust of your father you will do. He was a murderer from the beginning and abode not in the truth, because there's no truth in him. When he speaks a lie, he speaketh of his own, for he is a liar and the father of it. A couple of different other versions. Christian Standard Bible, you're of your father, the devil, and you want to carry out your father's desires. He was a murderer from the beginning and does not stand in truth, because there's no truth in him. There's no truth in him. When he tells a lie, he speaks from his own nature. You know how you can tell when the God of the scribes and Pharisees is lying? Because his lips are moving. New American Standard Bible, you're of your father, the devil. You want to do the desires of your father. Berean Literal, you're of your father, the devil, and you desire to do the desires of your father. I think we get the point. You belong to your father, the devil, says the Berean Study Bible. And you want to carry out his desires. Who was Jesus talking to in John 8:44? Because we know that a text without context can be a pretext. So let's go back here into John 8:44, and let's see who he's talking to, ladies and gentlemen. Let's see who he's talking to. So here he is saying it right here. You're of your father, the devil. They said Abraham's our father. Who are the people that say Abraham is their father? Oh, then Jesus says to these people, Jesus said it to the scribes. He said it to the Pharisees. He said it to those that were of the Judean faith in the first century. So then said Jesus to those Jews, you are of your father, the devil. And do you remember Jesus saying, beware the leaven of the scribes and the Pharisees? Probably should show you that so I can really narrow down exactly what I'm talking about. Beware the leaven of the scribes and the Pharisees. Let's make sure we get that one out so we know exactly who we're talking about. And that will take us over to Matthew chapter 16 and verse number 6. And Jesus very clearly says, this is what he's talking about, ladies and gentlemen. Share. He said, beware the yeast of the scribes and Pharisees, or leaven in King James. And the stupid apostles, and there's still a lot of people that call themselves apostles that are still stupid today. They said, oh, it's because we didn't bring any bread. They forgot to bring bread. But Jesus is like, no, dummies. When I say beware the leaven of the scribes and Pharisees, do you really think I'm talking about bread? And he goes on and tells them, listen, dummies, let's just do this way. They thought it was because they forgot to bring bread. And he says, no, dummies. I'm not talking about the bread. I'm talking about the doctrine of the Pharisees and the Sadducees, the scribes and the Pharisees. So, ladies and gentlemen, Jesus said that the doctrine of the Pharisees and the Sadducees is devilish. Jesus said that those people that follow the scribes and Pharisees, specifically the doctrines of the scribes and Pharisees, are devilish. Devilish. Let's see what that doctrine means in verse number 12. What does doctrine mean in verse number 12? But he was talking about the teaching of the scribes and Pharisees. Let's look at it in the Greek. Yes, the doctrines and the teachings of the scribes and Pharisees. A summarized body of respected teaching, rabbinical literature, Talmudic literature. So Jesus was saying that the teachings, the doctrines, the literature of the scribes, the Pharisees, the Talmudic rabbinic literature, Talmudic rabbinic literature is demonic. I didn't say it. Jesus said it. Think of that for a moment. Think of that for a moment. Jesus said that the doctrines and teachings of the scribes and Pharisees, the rabbis, the Talmud, the Old Testament, he said it's demonic. It's of the devil. And of course, we know that the word devil really means the adversary. Doesn't mean the hoofed devil. It means the adversary. The teachings of the scribes, the teachings of the Pharisees, the teachings of the rabbis, the teachings of the Talmud, according to the teachings of Jesus, are the teachings of the adversary of the Christ. Which causes me to ask you some interesting questions. Many of you that believe that you're really coming into deeper truth are going into what you call Hebraic truth. I did it myself. But if the teachings of the scribes and the Pharisees and the Talmud and the rabbis is demonic, then what are you doing when you go back to the Yeshuas and the Yahashuas and the Yahwehs, when you go back to the sacred names? His name's not Jesus, it's Jesus, it's this, it's that. How do you know? Oh, because we go back into the teachings of the original. Really? What about those of you that are going back into the feast days? Oh, I don't keep Christmas, I don't keep Halloween, I don't keep Easter. I keep the feast days, tabernacles, trumpets. I keep all of that original stuff. Oh, you mean all of that stuff that comes from the scribes? All that stuff that comes from the Pharisees? All of that stuff that comes from the rabbis and from the Talmudic literature? That's the stuff you keep? Ooh. And how about those of you that are studying and teaching and preaching from Talmudic and rabbinic quote unquote wisdom? Don't those things include circumcision? Good question, Charla. Sacred names, Jewish, rabbinic, Talmudic, feast, Pharisaic, Sadduceic, Talmudic, rabbinic, Kabbalah, Sadduceic, Pharisaic, Talmudic, rabbinic. But yet, so many of you are rushing back into Hebrew roots and patting yourself on the back for it. So many of you are rushing out to keep the feast days and patting yourself on the back and congratulating yourself for your enhanced spirituality. So many of you running back to Talmudic and rabbinic literature, the yeast of the scribes and Pharisees, the yeast of the rabbis, the yeast of the Talmud. You're running back to it and holding it up as truth and teaching it and preaching it and living and expounding it and patting yourself on the back for it. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm here to tell you, beware the leaven of the scribes and Pharisees. And like Jesus before me, I'm not talking about bread. I'm talking about the doctrine of the scribes and the Pharisees. And ladies and gentlemen, truth in plain sight, revealing themselves, telling on themselves, the Spirit speaketh expressly that people like Roland Kiner and other people that can't see past their, what are those things called, yarmulke, or past their prayer shawls, can't see that it's rabbinic, Talmudic, Pharisaic, Sadduceic. The Spirit speaks expressly that in the last times, some will abandon the faith and follow the deceitful spirits and the teachings of demons, who teaches of their daddy, the devil, the scribes, the Pharisees, the Talmud, the rabbis, the Old Testament, influenced by hypocrisy. Hypocrisy. We say that we're following Jesus, but we're following the people Jesus said not to follow. Liars. We say we're following Jesus, but we follow those that he said were liars. And why can't they see it? Because their consciences are seared with a hot iron. Their consciences, ladies and gentlemen, their consciences are sealed. Move for me. They're sealed with a hot iron. They're sealed with a hot iron, and this doesn't want to move for me. What's the problem here? They are sealed with a hot iron. I'm going to get to this. If it takes me all day, I'm going to get to this. What does this mean that they're sealed with a hot iron? You dirty rascals, you're not going to make me not talk about this. Their consciences are sealed with a hot iron. I'm going to get to this. Their consciences are sealed with a hot iron. What's their conscience mean? Their consciousness, their knowing, their spiritual consciousness, that part that's supposed to be in the divine image. What is it? It's seared with a hot iron. Cauterized, burnt, and seared. If you can't see that sacred names, feast, Talmudic, rabbinic wisdom, and Kabbalah are doctrines of demons, then your conscience is already seared with a hot iron. And you may continue to revolve until you can evolve past that misconception. I didn't say it. Jesus said it. Beware the leaven of the scribes and the Pharisees. And there's people coming in the last days in the truth movement, quote unquote, used very loosely, that have their consciences seared with a hot iron and can't see past their yarmulkes, can't see past their prayer shawls, can't see past their kosher diet, can't see by their no pork chopping, can't see past it because it makes them feel holy. It makes them feel righteous. It gives them a peg that they can hang something on that says, I'm okay, instead of having to get in here and do the inside job. It's high noon, cousin, and I'm your Huckleberry. To the chat room we go. Knock, knock, knocking on Jeffrey's door. Hello, come on in. I hope everyone plays nicely. They never do. They never do. Howdy from Big Thicket, Texas. Jesus was against religion. Absolutely. The tiny group controlling puppets. Yes, indeed. Old Testament, different God. Old Testament is the same God as the New Testament, the same killer, the same liar, the same cheater, the same devil and liar from the beginning. But yeah, I would say I see what you're saying. Yeasted bread all puffed up. It's funny you don't get much more direct than you are of your father, the devil, but people still don't get it. Isn't that something, Cliff? But we still want to use Yeshua and Yahashua and Yahweh and Hacham and all of these things. Oh, yeah, but yeah, it's Jewish, but that's scribes, that's Pharisees, yeah, but and we want to keep those feasts because it makes us feel really holy and really special. And we want to listen to Talmudic and rabbinic wisdom, and we want to do the Kabbalah. It makes us feel really cool. You are of your father, the devil. It's clear demons are running the place. Well, I would say they do include circumcision. Thanks for covering this, Jeff. Thank you. The Old Testament God was murderous, but they run back to it. Absolutely. Our God is not a bipolar psychopath, but the Old Testament God is. Yes. They covered up Azazel. Yes. I know the Book of Enoch calls God the master of spirits. Interesting. Really love what you said about how their father is a father of bloodshed. Yes, indeed. I got salvation. Okay. Gibberish God names. I'd like to hear more of your thoughts on circumcision. I mean, it's taking a piece of flesh and giving it to a god. It's bloodshed. I mean, how much more do we have to talk about it? I'm for God, not against God. Okay. Why does any god need us to worship them? Anything that needs you to worship it is not a god. Well, ladies and gentlemen, it's high noon. I'm your Huckleberry. We're going to start probably doing this every weekday, and we'll come out blazing. I am the artist formerly known as the Gospel Gunner. So we will come up high noon, guns a-blazing, ready to rock and roll. Coming back much more with much more podcast excellence today. I think I've decided, following up on what Scotty Roberts was talking about last night with the Shroud, I've decided that I know who the Shroud was. You'll want to tune in for that, ladies and gentlemen. We'll also be talking about, I don't even know her name, that Muslim representative from Minnesota. We're going to talk about Astral Eden. And I've got some more stuff up my sleeve as well. Until then, I'm Jeffrey Daugherty, the Christian whistleblower, encouraging you to guide your own spirit, master your own ascension, be your own guru. Are you worshiping the devil? Are you in league with Lucifer? Are you preaching, teaching, believing, espousing doctrines of devils, scribes, Pharisees, rabbi, Talmudic literature? I gave you the list. Check it twice. Find out if you're naughty or nice, because it ain't Santa Claus that's coming to town. It may be you going down to Chinatown if you don't get it together, cousin. We're the last generation of real humans. It's time to get it together. I'm Jeffrey Daugherty. This has been High Noon. I'm your Huckleberry. Lock and load.